So you're studying for the HSK, right? You've probably got the basics down, words like friend and mother. But if you really want to level up and master the language, you have to get a handle on the incredibly complex and fascinating web of Chinese relationships. So let's dive in. First things first, we have to talk about the core concept of Guānxì. Now, this isn't just another vocabulary word, it's a whole cultural framework. Think of it as this invisible, intricate network of connections that shapes basically everything, from how a family interacts to how business deals get done. If you can grasp this idea, all the vocabulary we're about to cover will make so much more sense. So here's our game plan. We're going to start right at the center, with the most intimate circle, family. Then we're going to peel back the layers of the onion, moving outwards through romantic partners, professional connections, and finally, we'll even get into how you talk to complete strangers. Okay, first up, your inner circle, your family. Now, one of the biggest challenges for HSK students is knowing the difference between the everyday spoken language, what we call Kouyu, and the more formal written language, or Shu Mianyu. And trust me, the HSK exam loves to test you on both. This slide is the perfect example. Look, everyone learns Bàba and Māma in HSK 1, but by the time you get to HSK 5, the exam expects you to know the formal versions, Fùqīn and Mǔqīn. You'd say Bàba to your dad's face, but you might use Fùqīn in a formal essay. Here's a pro tip. Using those formal terms in the HSK writing section, that will absolutely give your score a nice little boost. And of course, the family web doesn't stop there. It expands. You're going to run into words like Qingqi for your relatives and Sunza for a grandson right around HSK 4. These are absolutely crucial for understanding those family-based scenarios that pop up all the time in the reading and listening parts of the test. All right, let's move to the next layer out, romantic relationships. What's really interesting in Chinese is that the words you use for your partner actually change to show how serious you are. It's like a vocabulary journey that takes you from that first date all the way to the wedding aisle. So the progression usually looks something like this. You start out with 男朋友 or 女朋友, which are the standard everyday words for boyfriend or girlfriend. Then, as things get a bit more serious, you might start using the term 对象. And finally, once you're married, you become 夫妻, which means husband and wife. So what exactly is a 对象? This is a super common word you'll hear in spoken Chinese, and it implies a way deeper level of commitment. If you call someone your Duìxiàng, you're basically telling the world, hey, this is not just some casual fling. We're dating with marriage on our minds. Now listen up, because this is a critical cultural trap you have to avoid. The word Àirén, if you translate it literally, means lover. But in mainland China, it almost always means your spouse, your husband, or your wife. Seriously, if you refer to your new girlfriend as your Àirén, you are going to get some really confused looks. It's a classic mistake that just screams, I'm still learning. Okay, let's expand that circle even further. We're moving out into the social and professional world now. And this is where that big idea we talked about, Guānxì, really comes into play. These 4 words, you are going to hear them constantly in HSK listening scenarios. You've got 同事, your colleague, 邻居, your neighbor. Then there's 客人, which could be a guest you invite to your home or even a client at your business. And finally, 师傅, a really respectful term for any kind of skilled worker. And speaking of 师傅, here's a fantastic, practical tip you can use tomorrow. When you hop in a taxi or someone comes over to fix your Wi-Fi, calling them 师傅 is a wonderful sign of respect. It's such a simple word, but it shows you have some cultural awareness, and it's incredibly useful in day-to-day life. We have covered a ton of vocabulary, so let's switch gears for a minute and talk grammar. We're going to look at 2 super common patterns that are really easy to get wrong, but the good news is they're actually pretty simple to fix. So let's kick this off with a little quiz. How would you say the sentence, I married him, in Chinese? Just take a second to think about it. Now, your first instinct, like most English speakers, might be to just translate it word for word. But if you said 我结婚他, that's actually incorrect. And this points to a huge grammar rule. In Chinese, verbs that describe a mutual action, like 结婚, to marry, can't just take a direct object. You can't marry him directly. The correct way to say it needs a preposition. You have to use 跟 or 和, which in this context both basically mean with or and.
So the structure you have to burn into your brain is person A with person B does the action. 我跟他结婚了. I, with him, got married.
And this same exact logic applies to all sorts of other relationship verbs. You don't break up your girlfriend, you break up with your girlfriend. 我和女朋友分手了. You don't meet your friend, you meet with your friend. 我跟朋友见面. I promise, once this pattern clicks, your spoken Chinese will sound so much more natural.
Okay, grammar trap number 2 is all about describing how people treat each other in a relationship. For this, we need the little preposition dui, which means towards or to. This word is the key to talking about the dynamic or the quality of a connection. The structure is really simple. It's person A, then dui, then person B, and then you stick an adjective on the end. For example, 我妈妈对我很严格. Literally, this means my mother towards me is very strict. But of course, we translate that as my mother is strict with me. It is the perfect way to describe someone's attitude or behavior towards someone else. And now we've arrived at our final layer. And honestly, this might be the most fascinating one of all, talking to strangers. This is where you can really see the cultural value of creating warmth and community in action. That's right, in China, it is completely normal and very common to call total strangers by family titles. It's not because anyone is confused. It's a social tool. It's a way to shorten that distance between people and instantly create a feeling of friendliness and respect. So you might see an elderly man on the street and politely call him ye ye or grandpa. An elderly woman would be nai nai, grandma. And one you'll hear all the time is ayi or auntie, which is used for pretty much any middle-aged woman, like a shopkeeper or a street vendor. And that brings me to one last absolutely vital HSK tip. When you're in the listening exam and you hear a speaker mention an ayi, do not automatically assume they are talking about their actual biological aunt. More often than not, it's just the polite way of referring to an older woman they're not related to. In these situations, context is everything. Whew, okay, from the formal Fùqīn to the friendly Àirén, from finally mastering that gun structure to knowing how to avoid the Àirén trap, you now have a much, much deeper toolkit for talking about relationships in Chinese. So I'll leave you with this question. Who will you talk about using the gun structure today?